an Iranian missile near Turkish airspace, why NATO's Article 5 was not triggered, and what that decision reveals: a missile linked to Iran was intercepted by NATO air defense systems as it approached Turkish airspace, with debris reported falling in Hatay province in southern Turkey. Turkish officials confirmed the projectile had crossed Iraqi and Syrian airspace before being destroyed over the eastern Mediterranean. The interception was technically successful. What followed diplomatically was more complicated. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the incident is unlikely to trigger NATO's Article 5, the alliance's collective defense clause, which commits all member states to treat an attack on one as an attack on all. Article 5 has been formally invoked only once in NATO's history, in the immediate aftermath of the September 11th attacks. The decision not to invoke it here is being examined carefully by alliance members, regional governments, and security analysts, not because the decision is necessarily wrong, but because the reasoning behind it reveals important things about how NATO's commitments actually function under pressure. What happened over Hatay? The trajectory of the intercepted missile from Iranian territory across Iraqi and Syrian airspace into the eastern Mediterranean covers a route that has become increasingly active as regional tensions have elevated. NATO air defense systems intercepted the missile before it entered Turkish airspace. Debris fell in Hatay province, the southernmost point of Turkey's territory bordering Syria. Hatay's geography, a narrow strip extending into the eastern Mediterranean, places it directly in the path of trajectories originating from or transiting through the Levant. The interception demonstrated the functionality of NATO's integrated air defense architecture, which exists precisely to address scenarios like this one. The system worked as designed. The policy question that followed, whether a successful interception producing debris on NATO territory constitutes an attack sufficient to trigger Article 5, is where the analysis becomes significant. Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty states that an armed attack against one or more alliance members shall be considered an attack against all. The language is deliberately ambiguous. Such action as it deems necessary does not mandate any specific military response. The decision about whether any given incident constitutes an armed attack sufficient to trigger Article 5 is a political judgment made collectively, not an automatic legal mechanism. Several factors inform the decision not to invoke Article 5 here. First, the missile was intercepted before entering Turkish airspace. The debris that fell in Hatay resulted from the interception itself, not from an unimpeded strike on Turkish territory. Whether a missile destroyed in the interception process constitutes an attack on the territory where debris falls is a genuinely contested legal and political question. Second, attribution and intent matter. A missile crossing multiple airspaces raises questions about whether Turkey was the intended target. Intent, difficult to establish in real time, affects the political judgment about Article 5 applicability. Third, the strategic consequences of invocation are substantial. A formal Article 5 determination commits the entire alliance to collective response against the attacking state. In a moment of elevated regional tension, with active diplomatic processes underway, the threshold for triggering a mechanism committing 31 NATO members to collective action is high by design. Article 4 provides for consultation among alliance members whenever, in the opinion of any of them, the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of the parties is threatened. It is a mechanism for discussion and coordination, a formal channel through which member states can raise concerns, share intelligence, and coordinate responses without committing to collective military action. Article 5 is the collective defense commitment, the mechanism that transforms an attack on one member into a legal and political obligation for all members to respond. The gap between the two is significant in practice. Article 4 consultations allow the alliance to address incidents and express solidarity without the escalatory implications of a formal Article 5 invocation. Turkey has invoked Article 4 multiple times historically regarding Iraq in 2003, Syria in 2012 and 2015, precisely because it provides a response option below the threshold of collective defense commitment. In the current incident, Article 4 consultations allow NATO to address what happened over Hatay, reinforce Turkey's air defense posture, and communicate alliance concern without formally committing to a military response against Iran. The incident and the decision not to invoke Article 5 have implications extending in several directions simultaneously. For Turkey, the outcome demonstrates NATO air defense functioning effectively on its behalf, combined with an alliance decision stopping short of full collective defense commitment. Ankara will draw its own conclusions, and those conclusions will inform Turkish decision-making in a region where it maintains complex relationships with Russia, Iran, and various Syrian factions. For NATO as an institution, the incident tests the alliance's ability to manage member territory incidents without triggering escalatory mechanisms that could rapidly expand the scope of conflict. Hegseth's public characterization of Article 5 invocation as unlikely, before any formal alliance consultation concluded, is itself significant. It communicates American preference to allied governments and to Iran simultaneously. For Iran, the incident and Article 5 decision provide data about NATO's threshold for collective response. The alliance's decision not to invoke collective defense over a missile intercepted near member territory is information Iranian planners will incorporate into their escalation risk assessments. For the broader regional picture, the incident illustrates that elevated military activity does not respect borders with precision. Missiles transiting multiple airspaces, debris falling in NATO member territory, and alliance air defense systems engaging threats in contested airspace are operational realities. The existing frameworks were not designed with this specific context in mind. The Hatay incident is unlikely to be the last time NATO air defense systems engage objects originating from or transiting through the Middle East conflict zone. The more significant question it raises is not whether Article 5 should have been invoked. Reasonable arguments exist on multiple sides of that determination, but whether the alliance's existing threshold framework is calibrated for a period when the boundary between Middle Eastern conflict and NATO member territory is as permeable as the trajectory over Hatay demonstrated it to be. That is a question NATO members will need to answer not in response to one incident, but as a matter of policy before the next one.